Welcome back to the Joe Miller Show, KOAN Hot Talk, 1080 AM, 95.1 FM. We have with us again Christie Herrera. She was on a few weeks ago. She's a senior fellow at the Foundation for Government Accountability. FGA promotes better lives by equipping policymakers with principled strategies to replace failed health and welfare programs. She leads the Foundation's Medicaid work, so she's been staying on top of what's going on with respect to Governor Walker's, and I've said this before, I stand behind unconstitutional action to expand Medicaid in lieu of the legislature's action, but also counter to what the legislature has directed him to do. This is a guy that campaigned on a pro-life plank, at least back in 2010, and I can tell you that many, if not a majority, of his original supporters were pro-life, and yet now he is pushing the boundary, expanding Medicaid in what I think is an illegal way, and also by doing so, he's going to expand the number of taxpayer-funded abortions in this state by the hundreds. How somebody that's pro-life can do that, anybody's guess, but I think it's just, again, more of the problem that we've been talking about for some time on this show, and that's politicians, the governor included, rhetoric not matching action. If you were a supporter of the governor, you need to let him know your dissatisfaction with this. I've invited him on this show before. I'll invite people from his administration that want to speak to this on this show to try to defend this. It just makes no sense. Christie Herrera, I appreciate you agreeing to come on the show to talk about the legality of the governor's decision. There's been a lot of discussion as to whether or not there is constitutional authority for his expansion, despite the fact that the legislature refused to expand it and also included in their legislation not expanding it, that the governor could not do so. What's your opinion on this?
Well, Joe, thanks for having me. I think a first-year law student would be able to see that the governor does not have the authority to unilaterally expand Medicaid. He's doing legislation by press conference, and he deliberately lied about how much Medicaid expansion is going to cost the taxpayers of Alaska so he could end run them and just do it himself.
My word. So when you say deliberately lied, what kind of numbers are we talking? What did he say it was going to be, and what is it really?
Okay, so he says that there are going to be 40,000 able-bodied, working-age Alaskans eligible for the Medicaid expansion, but only about half of them are going to sign up. Now, when have you heard of a government program where only half of the people sign up for it? We have seen buyer's remorse in pretty much every other state that has expanded Medicaid, saying, listen, we expected 199,000 people, this is Illinois, to sign up. 561,000 actually enrolled. All of the states that have expanded Medicaid have blown past their projected enrollment by 91%, meaning there is no way when you look at his enrollment projections that they are correct. He's also saying it's not going to cost a lot of money. Right now in Alaska Medicaid today, it costs about $10,000 to cover an adult in the Alaska Medicaid program. He says, it's going to cost me about $7,500. So he is screwing the pooch, so to speak, with every single part of this cost equation. He said a low number of people will enroll. It's going to be really cheap to cover them, and therefore we should expand Medicaid. And all parts of that are
well, you would think, I mean, he's obviously paying attention to other states. I mean, they're citing, the governor's office is citing other Medicaid expansions done by unilateral governor action in Kentucky and Ohio. So on the one hand, justifying his act by pointing to other states, but then in looking at the cost, just completely ignoring the experience of other states. Tell us a little bit about this action itself. I mean, when the legislature, that was a tough fight. I mean, polling in the state suggested that 70% of people in the state wanted a Medicaid expansion. Lots of people put pressure, pro-lifers put pressure on their legislators. The legislators did not actually pass out the governor's plan, and now he's doing an end run around that. What's the argument, and does it hold water as to whether or not he has lawful authority to do it?
Yeah, well, let me first address the polling. So most of the polling kind of goes something like this. Are you a terrible person and don't want people to have health care, or do you support Medicaid expansion? I mean, look at every single poll that's done. And listen, what we have seen in polling in other states, the more voters know about Medicaid expansion, the less they like. And there has never been a poll in Alaska done on that. And so I think they're vastly overstating the political appeal of Medicaid expansion. But anyway.
Well, yeah, the way the poll ought to be asked, are you for using government dollars to murder unborn babies? I mean, then what would the number be?
Or do you want to discourage work and increase poverty by putting 40,000 able-bodied, working-age, childless adult Alaskans onto a Medicaid welfare program under Obamacare?
Excellent. Yeah.
That could be another poll
let's...
question. But anyway, let's talk about the legality of what the governor's doing. So he said, listen, I know in Alaska statute that I can do this on my own if Medicaid expansion is mandatory. And he said, if you look at the Obamacare statute, it says every state has to expand Medicaid. Yes, if you were living in 2009. Unfortunately for Governor Walker, we're living in 2015 where Medicaid expansion is optional, and 21 states, including Alaska, have not done it.
The Supreme Court now says that words don't mean what they say. So he's just using the new Supreme Court version of interpretation, right?
I never knew he would agree with the Roberts majority, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. So I think what you're seeing is the legal arguments start to take shape in that if there's going to be a creation of a new government program, and the Supreme Court said that Medicaid expansion is a new program, that the governor does not have the authority to accept those federal funds. In fact, Commissioner Val Davidson even told the Alaska Dispatch in December that while she hopes the legislature will vote on Medicaid expansion, the reason why is because she knows she needs their approval to receive those federal funds. So she's actually told the press that the legislature are the ones that this is riding on. And now to have him do a press conference and say, we're going to do it unilaterally, I think is ridiculous, and I think the legislature has a real legal challenge to sue.
Well, somebody ought to follow up with that commissioner, put her on the spot and say, hey, look, you said this back in November, and now look at this. Where were you wrong before? I mean, there needs to be some hard questions like that asked. Unfortunately, regrettably, the media in Alaska, of course, is not too favorable toward life, and so there's not going to be a lot of effort to expose the governor on this. In fact, they probably are willing partners in his effort to expand Medicaid in the state.
Oh, I'm sure, along with the hospitals and big insurance and farm and all the people, all the crony capitalists who stand to gain from Medicaid expansion will stand alongside the governor and approve it. And that's why it's up to us as taxpayers, as folks who are pro-life, to, register our discontent and tell the legislature, if you let this slide now, you are setting a precedent to let the governor end run you on every single big decision. You guys should just close up shop, lock up the Capitol, put a padlock on it, and go home. Don't even show up to Juneau because you're not needed. That is the signal that the governor is sending.
Well, there's been a willingness of the Alaska courts to legislate from the bench already, and this is the problem that the legislature's had for so long in this state, is an unwillingness, not only, of course, we've got a strong governor as it is, but a complete unwillingness to stand up to the other branches, especially the court system. And so the precedence is already kind of set. Now, with respect to, you were talking about kind of some of the vested interests behind this, the crony capitalism, Where's the medical industry in the state?
I can tell you that the hospital industry, particularly, are spending billions with a B, billions of dollars all across the country to lobby for Medicaid expansion. Why is that? Because when Obamacare was being drafted, they sat around a table with Obama and they said, listen, we agree to have you cut some of our money if you agree to expand Medicaid. Now, when you think about that deal, that is between them and the Obama administration. Why should the state legislature be on the hook for fulfilling that promise? The crazy part is the Obamacare was passed, everyone clapped. Later on, the hospitals lobbied to forget the cuts that they agreed to in Obamacare. So they're actually double dipping. They want Medicaid expansion, and the cuts they agreed to have Medicaid expansion be included in the law are never going to take place.
I'll tell you, it's extraordinary to me that the legislature did what it did in the state with such pressure on them to go a different way. What do you attribute the legislature's action to? Why did they actually turn back the governor despite all the cronies wanting it to go forward?
Well, I think they see a couple things. One is the incredible buyer's remorse of Medicaid expansion in other states. There have been other states that have done Medicaid expansion. Moderate Republicans were primaried and lost. They had Medicaid directors resign in disgrace. Elections were won and lost over Medicaid expansion. And the interesting part is, politically, once you educate voters, conservative Republicans hate Medicaid expansion, and they will vote you out if you approve it. The second thing is they also have seen the massive cost overruns. I mean, the state is going to be on the hook for 10% of Obamacare Medicaid expansion costs. But it's 10% of what? How many people are going to sign up? How sick are they? How much is it going to cost to cover all of those people? It is 10% of an unknowable amount. And when the price of oil is so low and you guys need to tighten your fiscal belt as it is, How are they going to budget for this? There's no way to do it. So I think what we're finding is the legislature made the right decision in rejecting Medicaid expansion, and they need to do it again.
Well, yep, they've got to stand up to the governor. There's got to be a consequence to this. Hopefully the legislature will sue over it. I don't think there's much chance the governor's going to reverse himself. Christie Herrera, senior fellow at the Foundation for Government Accountability. Appreciate you bringing to light these issues. Thank you for being on the Joe Miller Show and the action that you've taken against the Medicaid expansion here in Alaska.
Yeah.
Stay with us, the Joe Miller Show, back after these messages.